I can't say this too loudly, Sam, but a profitable business gets paid tax. Data, information, whatever you want to call it, does nothing. It doesn't change anything, doesn't do anything. So there is a very great need for action piece after the data collection. There's an unbalanced relationship between business and employers and staff often. Businesses are actually have been created to take risks in the world. When you pay a member of staff, you are usually always contributing to a family, and that means we're contributing to the future.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Sam Knowles. Joining us today is John Hibbs, the co-founder of CoEfficient Solutions, a company that helps organisations grow from the human perspective. It does this by gathering genuinely useful feedback data from those who work for an organisation and then deploying this intelligence in the most productive way possible to drive both individual and therefore organisational growth. Founded on the principle that businesses are simply groups of people, CoEfficient gives hearts and minds that make up a business a voice, ensuring that they feel heard and are valued. This, John believes, is what enables businesses to serve as creators of positive change within society. CoEfficient serves all sorts of different clients right around the world, and John is based out of St. Peter Port on the island of Guernsey, from where he joins us today. But his journey to becoming a pioneer in using data smarter to help companies grow is neither traditional nor expected. 25 years ago, he was running a personal training business that was struggling to scale. A chance meeting with a business mentor first opened his eyes to the power of data, measurement and evaluation. This set him on course to develop his Monagy flow model of growth, and we'll come back to that for sure, and a thriving, scalable business that few, perhaps least of all John himself, would ever have predicted. First up, John, welcome to Data Malarkey.
Thank you very much. It's fantastic to be here, Sam.
Very good. It's great to have you with us. Now, I trust that was a decent summary of who you are and what you do. Is there anything that I've got wrong? Anything you'd like to add?
Well, it was beautifully articulated. You need to watch out. We could be giving you a job. So yeah, it was perfect. I don't quite live in St. Peter Port, just for those people who live on Guernsey. I live on the opposite side of the island. For those of you listening who don't know Guernsey, it's very small. It's about 25 square miles. St. Peter Port is the capital, a beautiful old town, and I actually live on the west coast, a place called Cobo, and the beach is 60-second walk away.
Have you been in this morning already?
I haven't. It's very cold. Yeah, I do go in most days in the summer.
Not quite in the summer when we're recording. Now listen, before we get down and dirty and talk about data in particular, I want to start with a question, as I always do, that's designed to get to the heart of what makes you, you. And it doesn't necessarily ask us about your work. So if you could tell me, John, how do you spend your time?
Well, I have two teenagers, so they take up a lot of time. Although I love having teenagers. I think you love your children no matter what age, but actually I find teenagers a lot more engaging than toddlers and babies. And I love the fact that my kids now sort of go out of the house and bring back stories and information and experiences that they share, and I find that good fun. I play bridge, which illustrates that I'm pretty boring, but I love that. I've been playing bridge for 19 years, so I'm still a beginner. Try to keep fit if I can. I go to the gym most days, and I enjoy relationships. I enjoy building things. Obviously, my full-time role is with CoEfficient, but I consult for some other businesses as well who are doing great things, and try to have a little bit of fun in life. I take interest in an awful lot of things. I enjoy reading. I enjoy spending time with the family, books, films, that sort of stuff.
Very good. Now let's turn the clock back to the last millennium. Tell me about your first personal training business, how you got into it, and the kind of service that you provided.
I was your sort of typical teenager, brought up in a small town, entitled, or small community, entitled, thought the world was going to, give me a wonderful career on a plate. And so I moved to London. I was never really very employable, because I was, a bit young, a bit arrogant, thought I knew it all. And I started my first business. I was young and I was fit, and I was really into sort of health and fitness, and bucked the trend, I suppose, with a lot of so I didn't drink, and I ate quite healthily. And when all a lot of my peer group were thinking that Friday and Saturday nights were the only thing to really get excited about. And so started this personal training business, and I did really enjoy it. And I've always enjoyed a one-on-one relationship and a sort of one-on-one discussions. I find I'm very comfortable in that space. And thought naively that, I was going to be making 100 grand very easily, and, all the clients were going to sort of just appear out of nowhere. And that didn't happen. And so for the first few years, I was struggling away, making sort of no money, really kind of scratching my head as to what was going wrong. And then the universe, as the universe does from time to time, gave me a gift, and it, we're lucky enough it gives all of us gifts from time to time. And this gift was a new client, and it was an Australian chap, a guy called Les Hercules Callis, and you won't mind me mentioning his name. And he was a business coach from Australia who had moved to London. And this was 25 years ago ish, and I'd never heard of a business coach before. I thought, this is interesting. And he took a real interest in me and my business, and he became one of my clients, and I would personal fitness train him and his family for about a year, and he took a real interest in me, which is nice. And then after about a year, and I was sort of still struggling at this point, business wise, he actually sat me down and he said, "Look, John, I like you. You're a nice guy, and you're a decent personal trainer, but you are shit at running a business." And he said, for the love of God, please let me help you. So once I got over the shock of that, I said, okay, well, let's do that. So I gave him free personal training. He gave me free business coaching. And this was really the turning point in my whole entire life, because I was just fascinated with his view on business and how it kind of like plugged together into life. And up until that point, I suppose, I thought business was something different kind of to everything else. And it was like, there was this kind of a secret that people who were successful at business didn't share the secret with anyone else. You're not taught, I certainly wasn't taught business at school. I know you have business studies at school now, which I know a little about the curriculum. I don't agree with much of it. But Les taught me fundamentally two things. One, that businesses are all about people and all about humans and relationships. And two, he said, look, you've got to start measuring things, John. And then you use those measurements and that information, that data, to make better decisions about your business. And he said the wonderful power of that is if you have data, it kind of sets you free from having to guess. So I went from a world of guessing what to do and failing and then getting frustrated to measuring stuff, and we were sort of like measuring all sorts of stuff, and then using that data to improve. And one of the very first things he got me to do was, and this is so simple, Sam, it's almost ridiculous. He said, measure, from my perspective, how happy or energized my clients are after every session. And I was like, well, I don't even know how to do that. And he said, well, you just, in your diary, you just write down like a smiley emoji or an unhappy emoji, and that's that. So I thought, well, this is a bit silly, but I'll give it a go. And my business model at the time was, you'd either sign up as a new client, you'd either sign up for like one session at 50 quid or something like that, or you'd buy a block of 10 for 450 quid. And nearly everybody bought a block of 10. And then what would happen is either you and I would get on and it would be great, and you would become a regular client, and you buy another block of 10 and another block of 10, and on we go. Or you get to 10 sessions and it wasn't really for you, and either we hadn't really kind of got on and clicked, which is okay, because it's a very sort of personal relationship experience having a personal trainer, so you can't be everybody's personal trainer, and you'd stop. So in the worst case scenario, I was at least getting 10 sessions out of every client. And so let's start measuring the energy levels of each session. And then I did that for about 3 months. And then he said, right, well, let's have a look at this. He said, at what point do the clients who eventually stop using you, at what point do they lose their energy? And sort of, you can tell they go off the boil a bit. And so I looked back at all my unhappy emojis and my happy emojis in my diary. And I realized it was always at about session 7 or 8 that clients would kind of go off the boil. And then when it came to the 10th session, they'd say, no, look, it's not really for me. Thank you very much, John. See you later. And so Les said, right, well, what you're going to do now is you're going to create what we're going to call a taster session. And that's how every single, or a taster block, this is how every single client is going to start with you. And so it's a block of 5. It was no cheaper or more expensive. It was exactly the same price, £225 for 5. And lo and behold, when every single client got to the end of 5, their energy levels are still high. They still wanted to do more. And when I said, right, we've got to sign you up and now we're going to move into blocks of 10, everyone said yes. So now, even out of those clients that didn't continue, I was now getting 15 sessions instead of 10. And I thought this, Sam, was the greatest thing ever. I just couldn't believe how clever it was. And so I implemented that into the business. And many, many other things that we sort of started measuring, engaging, and all this sort of stuff. And very quickly, really quite quickly, but within sort of 6 months or so, I had sort of too many clients that I could cope with. I had to employ a couple of people. And within a couple of years, I had a really great business. And I was only 25, 26, a really great business. And when I look back now, the overwhelming feeling I had was one of pride. And when I look back at my younger self now, I can think, oh my God, that was amazing. And I wish that for, certainly my children and any youngster really in the world. If you can build something and you can build it really well, and it's just that sense of achievement is amazing.
Brilliant. And that was and that was based on, I completely understand the logic of it, and I love the fact that Les's middle name is Hercules, or maybe that's his nickname. But
no, it's his real name. Yes, he was lucky, wasn't he?
Fantastic. And I'm sure you helped him become even more Herculean in the gym. But that was based, just to be clear, that was based on your assessment, not on their assessment of the mood, but just literally on your assessment of how they were feeling at the end of every session.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant. Beautifully simple. I'm sure you introduced more complicated measures, or maybe you got them to contribute thereafter. But that is an amazing galvanic impact on a business to have to employ additional coaches from just that one measure.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that, the action that we took after the data collection, was that the action cost us nothing. It literally cost us nothing to implement that. Just a different way of thinking. And I love solutions like that, because even if we'd undertaken that new kind of business model and it had failed, it's not like, oh, this is going to cost you £10,000 to implement. Let's keep your fingers crossed it succeeds. So that was, I like searching for potential solutions like that, where there's very little overhead.
Now, I know that there's not a straight line here, but how did you get from building a repeatable personal training business that you have pride on looking back 25 years to is it fair to call it a software as a service platform, but the platform that you run now as CoEfficient Solutions. I know from speaking to you before that measurement, data, and the right evidence and a focus on people are kind of red threads. But tell us how you got from there to today.
Without sort of wanting to bore anyone or going into too much detail, I was invited back to Guernsey to help a company in Guernsey. And so I did that, and Les sort of came with me as well. He would fly in a couple of times a year. And again, we used data to help, and we would start to measure as much as we could in the small business just internally. And none of this stuff was particularly clever. Like, we didn't employ data scientists or anything like that to help us. And that business grew really well. And then we had a very human-centric approach to it as well. Really looked after the staff and gave them an awful lot of autonomy about how to do things, and a lot of trust. And that sort of like that fundamental position that we took. I have a lot of faith in. I think in general terms, there's an unbalanced relationship between business and employers and staff. Often it's very much like, well, we're the organization. We'll tell you what to do and how to behave, and it's all our responsibility whether it works or not. And the power balance is off. And the employee, I think, oftentimes feels like, well, I'll go to work and I'll be told what to do, how to behave, and I'll try to do that. Whereas that doesn't feel like a truly equitable relationship to me. And if relationships aren't truly equitable, they often disintegrate and fall apart, just like in real life. So I did help that company for a bit, for about 10 years, and that was good fun. Then the more involved I got in, and the more I could kind of, I gravitated towards, actually, businesses really are all about these human beings, and kind of like measuring stuff, but not measuring, like if you talk to most businesses and you say, well, what are your metrics of success? I guarantee you that most of them will say money is one of the biggest factors. And I realized slowly, I'm sure lots of other people have come to this realization before me, but I realized slowly over the course of a decade that actually money comes right at the end of the chain of events that make up a business. And so if you want an indicator of your success, it is the laggiest of all the indicators you can ever come up with. And actually, one of the things that I've done in all the organizations that I've worked with is, right, well, let's actually write down how much money we've got in the bank at the first of every month. And the step before that, how does that money get into the bank? Oh, we have to send out some invoices. Well, how many invoices are we sending out each month? And to send out an invoice, you have to do some work. So how much work in progress are we doing each month? And to do some work in progress, you have to have like a pipeline of potential clients who have had proposals or estimates sent out to them. So how many of those each month? And to get some proposals sent out, people have to know about you. Or you have to be having cups of coffees or doing talks or doing some form of standing on the street and telling people that you exist, marketing. So you can then create this flow of information. And actually, if you really want to increase the amount of money you're making at the end of that flow, you have to take it right back to the start and count how many cups of coffee you're having with people. And then you can start to see how these things flow. And that was really kind of like the kernel of thinking that drove me towards my Monagy flow business model, which I've used in all sort of like subsequent businesses. So I've been thinking about the Monagy flow for about sort of 10 years or so. And you've seen it. It's a nice little model. In fact, hopefully we can get an image of it somewhere. Oh, there, you printed it out. One, fantastic.
We will indeed include a link.
Yes. And basically the Monagy flow basically says, look, how to make more money, because money is important. I think people forget that actually business, all of the money, all of the wealth in the world is actually created by business. It doesn't come from anywhere else. It comes from trade and business. So it's really important that businesses exist and are tried to run as efficiently as possible. But they should also be a place where you can surround yourself with people you love and that love you back. And that might sound a little bit lovey-dovey, but actually, don't we want to spend time with people that we like and like us back and have a shared vision and view of the world and a purpose? And those things can be hugely powerful drivers. And also, businesses are actually have been created to take risks in the world and to try to make the world a better place. I don't think there is a business where they're trying to make the world a worse place for their customers. So when you start sort of thinking about the world in that way, it really changes how you view business and how it all kind of interlinks. And so all of this kind of like drove me towards CoEfficient. And so CoEfficient is only a couple of years old. I'm very lucky to have some good friends who are also experienced business people and think similar to me. So CoEfficient was founded by myself, a really good friend of mine, a guy called Luke Cairns, and our secret weapon, a guy called John David, who's was a data scientist, PhD from Oxford, and was like the cleverest person I've ever met. And so the three of us kind of got together and started thinking that actually, if you agree that there's a flow to a business, a chain of events, actually, and money's the outcome, and money's like the main goal. Well, if you take that chain of events back, it always seems to start with the human beings, and it's the humans that create the processes, administer the processes, come up with the ideas, have to kind of like rub along together inside these kind of like weird wobbly soups that are businesses. And if you can surface information from them, then actually you've got a really fantastic lead indicator of future successes or problems. And that's pretty much the premise of CoEfficient. We know that organizations that listen to their staff and look after their staff and extract data and information from their staff perform better. And it's wonderful if businesses perform better, because actually they're more profitable. You get to, I can't say this too loudly, Sam, but a profitable business gets to pay tax, and that's wonderful because that's where all the money comes from that governments can use, and they should be using it appropriately to create a better environment for all of us and look after people who can't look after themselves. I understand there is some debate about how well a government are doing that, but that's the principle of it. Businesses who are successful can pay their staff really well. When you pay a member of staff, you are usually always contributing to a family, and that means we're contributing to the future. But oftentimes we forget that actually if you create great environments for your staff, the staff are happier, whatever that means for them. The staff go home every day. And we kind of forget that in the business world. We forget there's a real overlap between business and society and community and life. But happy staff that go home every day create happy families. And happy families become happy communities. Communities is where you and I live. And where we go to get our staff from in the first place. It really starts to feel like, measuring the sentiments of your staff could be the largest wealth creation opportunity we have, not just for business, but for our societies as well.
I'm taken by so much that you say, I'm very, very attracted to your Monagy Flow model. Not least, it's looking like a hand-drawn periodic table.
Yeah.
I particularly adore that. A previous guest on this show, who I think I must connect you, a guy called Alexis Kingsbury, he runs a business called Air Manual, which is I mean, at its base is a company that systemizes everything, that puts checklists in for everything, so that when you have a finance meeting, you don't waste time talking about X or Y. You if you want to, you can build in 5 minutes to talk about the football last night, if that's going to help the glue. But the reason that I mention him is that he runs a business of I think 20 people, 9 countries, 4 continents. Very distributed business, and they have a 10 and they're loads of different time zones, but they have a 10-minute daily check-in where they go through systematic things, and they actually the people element of that, even though they're distributed around the world, it's very important. So that's definitely resonant. I also, I love in your model that purpose comes on one side and money is absolutely the outcome. There's been a lot of nonsense and a lot of time and energy wasted on purpose. The small p, big P purpose in businesses, but a business that says that its purpose is to make money. If in an initial conversation with a potential client, that's always an alarm bell for me. As you say, it's absolutely a consequence. It is an outcome. Harley Davidson doesn't exist to make money. It does exist to make money. That's a consequence of what it does. But its real purpose is to unleash the easy rider in every 47-year-old accountant. That's a much better way of thinking. But a couple of other things, if I may, just kind of pick up on it, and they may stimulate. One is you're talking about you're going back in the business. How many invoices? How much work are we doing? How much marketing? I've always had a rule in the last kind of 10, 11 years of running our very small 3-person business. We don't have ambitions to be big and to grow. But is even when you're busiest, particularly when you're busiest, always go and have another cup of coffee with somebody. Go and spend some time with somebody else who you're not working with. And my business partner initially thought this was lunacy. You're on deadline and you're going to go and see someone. The 2 things about that: one is that it makes you finish the work before you go and have the cup of coffee for that deadline. But 2, without those conversations, without those human touches, where is the next going to come? The last thing I wanted to pick up on was your focus on people rather than money, rather than companies. Money is an abstract concept. Okay, you have those, but money. I promise to pay the bearer of this piece. Money is abstract. Companies are abstract. Countries are abstract. Law and governance, and the ideas behind companies are abstract. And people, buildings and computers, they're physically real, but people are what's real. And your emphasis on putting energy in finding out what those real, the only real part of a company thinks and feels and wants and fears and the rest of it. That and your phrase, the weird wobbly soups that are businesses, I think it's a wonderful phrase. I'm just kind of picking up on a number. There may be nothing there that you want to respond to, but
no. Well, you're absolutely right. And some of the most important things in our life, like love and friendships and businesses and money, all of these things that we hold, and nations, all these things that we hold really dear to us and get very passionate about, don't even exist. Don't exist in the real. It really exist, and so if you want an example of how powerful these kind of like passions and purposes can be, you don't need to look too much further. I gave a talk once to mainly to a bunch of kids, but all their parents were there as well, and everyone in the room was very shocked when I told them that Manchester United didn't really exist, and neither does the game of football in the real sense. It's all just kind of like made up. It's about storytelling and etc. And if you tie that back into business, we think the brand of the business is so important, and it's kind of somehow defines the personality of that organization and what it stands for and what it means, and etc. But of course, we forget that actually without the people, creating the brand and living the brand day to day, it's nothing. It's meaningless. So yeah, absolutely, everything comes back to people.
So, some might wish. I mean, some might wish that Man United didn't exist, including perhaps at a time of recording its manager Eric Ten Hag. But we'll skip on that. Now, listen, I call myself a data storyteller, and I genuinely believe, and I think we're kind of aligned on this. I genuinely believe that if you're going to appeal to the emotion in real people, but which guides and drives their decision making, but also if you're going to appeal to the rational side of them, which is kind of uniquely human with our cerebral cortices, you need to balance data and story. You need to balance narrative and number, stories, statistics. In your business and in your kind of view of the world, what do you believe is the best way to combine narrative, numbers, stories, and statistics?
Well, I think the first thing to note there is actually data, information, whatever you want to call it, does nothing. Like it doesn't change anything, doesn't do anything. You need some sort of action off the back of that, and some kind of narrative or story. And so many times businesses will think, we'll run a staff engagement survey or something like this, and that will solve all our problems. And of course, it doesn't solve anything. So there is a very great need for the action piece after the data collection. Now, as human beings, we do respond, and it's well documented and well known that we do respond very well to stories, and they have to mean something. So, CoEfficient, we've been rather crafty about this because to be able to articulate a compelling story to someone, you kind of have to know them, and you have to know them a little bit. So what CoEfficient does, the way that we get ourselves to market and bring ourselves to market, is we actually have a network of what we call partners: business coaches, business advisors, consultants, HR strategists. And we work with these people to take our data, which is, I was going to say dry, but maybe that's not quite the right word, and turn that into meaningful stories that mean something for the businesses that they're working with. You've got to make sure that the stories are very captivating in another way. And the interesting thing with businesses, sorry, just to carry on that point, is that actually there's very often not a one fits all, if you know what I mean. Because businesses, just like humans, there's a million different businesses with a million different leaders and a million different cultures and a million different staff. And it's converting that sort of standard data measurement where you can compare yourself with others and et cetera, and see where you're performing well and where you're not performing well, and then turning that into an action plan that suits your business, tailored to you. And this is where I think, even if I do say so myself, we've been quite clever.
You've been crafty indeed. And I think that movement from data to insight and insight to action, we agents of insight are finding increasingly, as we work with a wide variety of different businesses, charities, universities in particular, but a lot of corporates, that you can look at a lens of the way that an organization moves from data to insight and or insight to action. Some companies, some organizations will subcontract the getting to insight bit out to third parties. Now, those might be market research businesses, or they may be consultants, or they may be, but there's this, how do you go from data to insight? And then there's, how do you move from insight to action? How would you characterize you and your colleagues in CoEfficient at doing both of those things?
Well, my colleagues are excellent at doing it. I'm very bad at doing it. So
at doing both bits.
So this is how CoEfficient works. My amazing developers, they come up with, or we come up with an amazing idea, and I just get very excited about this idea, and I say, roll it out to everybody. This is absolutely fantastic. Everyone's going to love it. And they're like, no. Well, let's give it to one person and talk to them and see what they think. And if that goes well, we give it to like 2 people. And if that goes well, and they are right every time they're right, because when you're building any sort of business, you really need to get, so we deal in collecting data, and we do it really well, but actually that's for companies. But what we need is even when we're talking to people, we're still collecting information, we're still collecting data. And so we build a feature, we give it to one person. What do you think? Does it work? Do you understand it? Does it make sense? And they give us loads of feedback, and we iterate. We give it to 2 people. What do you think? We go back and we iterate. And as we build, the iterations become smaller and smaller, and more people go, yeah, that's actually really good. And then we can roll it out. So, my developers are very good at putting their hands up and shouting no at me. They've got very skilled.
And the innovations that you bring to your platform tend to be driven by you rather than driven by customers, or are you sometimes having conversations with customers that will say, do you know, it would be really useful if we could do this?
Yes, that happens a lot, and we're lucky because we have this partnership network, which means we've got basically a group of ambassadors who kind of want us to do well, because if we do well, it supports them, and they are, very kind and careful about how they help us. We have been very careful to select, probably procure people who think about the world the same way that we do. So, we don't work with anyone who thinks money is the be all and end all. It's a combination of people who view the world the same as us. So, it's always a collaborative journey.
Now, of course, we've got to have a Columbo question. Just one more thing question. Is there any way that you work with data that I haven't asked you that I should have done?
Probably, but I can't think what it is. I think you've done a fantastic job, Sam, at keeping this conversation going.
Good. I absolutely love the origin story and the way that you've taken that on, and the way that you've moved that. That you built your Monagy Flow model, and it is incarnate in your business. So I just think it's absolutely brilliant. Now, listen. Finally, where can our listeners, our viewers, find out about you and what you're up to online, social media, and so on?
Yep. So look us up on our website, coefficient-solutions.com. I love LinkedIn, so you can look me up on LinkedIn. I love making friends on LinkedIn. So drop me a message there if you'd like to learn more about CoEfficient. Very happy to meet anybody.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, John. I think it's fair to say if there were only more people with your approach to using data smarter, there'd be rather less malarkey in the world of employee relations, employee feedback, and rather more data-driven common sense. John Hibbs, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks so much for listening to Data Malarkey. To find out what kind of data storyteller you are, why not take our data storytelling scorecard? It takes just 2 minutes to complete and will give you a personalized report right away. Visit data-storytelling.scoreapp.com or follow the link in the show notes.